Thank you in advance. And Matt McGinley, please take it away from InMobi.
Okay, all good? All good? Yes. Hello, hello. Yes, good. Okay, thanks, JJ. Great to see so many familiar faces at an event again. I think this lovely day we're having in Sydney as well. I'm going to be talking about something that's actually quite near and dear to my heart, and that is gaming or mobile gaming. And I think in our industry, in advertising and marketing, at that intersection of gaming, it's actually quite an exciting time to be here. You know, we've seen huge acquisitions from Microsoft buying Activision for almost $70 billion, probably dwarfing what they paid to acquire Xandr. Also seen companies like Netflix, leap into the mobile gaming space right now, almost changing their entire business to sort of scale and diversify their offering. But it's quite funny. So I've been working in mobile ad tech for about a little under 10 years. And I realized as I was going through this presentation, I started playing mobile games about 20 years ago. And I think it's all started with this little game here, Snake, on the trusty Nokia 3310. I can see some smiles in the audience, otherwise known as the Brick, because it was quite literally indestructible. But I think what Nokia, I guess, failed to sort of understand was what they had actually done at that time. Preloading that game on the device at the time was actually reaching around 400 million people on the planet, which at those times was quite massive in the phone market, not the smartphone market, I think I should add. But I think what they failed to do was, in the years leading up until the iPhone release, was they actually failed to sort of innovate with a customer sort of first mentality. If you fast forward to 2012, a company by the name of Supercell, based in Finland, released a game called Clash of Clans. Seeing a few nods here as well. Look, what Supercell did was they recognized the innovation from obviously the iPhone launch, but obviously also from the mobile application. When they launched Clash of Clans in 2012, within 6 months, it was the #1 app in the App Store total. And it's one of those games back then was, making requests for in-game or in-app purchases, buying a weapon for 50 cents, an army for $3, what have you. At one stage, it was reported that they were making about $3 million per day just in in-game purchases. This is about the time when everyone thinks I should have made a mobile game or a mobile app back then. And look, how they were able to actually do that was they understood their customer base very, very well. They innovated with the customer at that forefront. We fast forward to 2016, I think we can all agree, thankfully prior to the pandemic, Pokemon Go was released. And I think, again, here, the company, they really started to innovate in this new age of customer innovation, right? They brought about accessibility to AR experiences in so many ways that we see today, that's for sure. But then fast forwarding to the elephant in the room, Netflix games, right? And I think this is going to be really interesting to see how this company plans to monetize this space and how they plan to grow this space. It's quite obvious they're doing this to bring on new customers. We saw in their recent reports that whilst customers are growing, they are actually stagnating in times. We've seen Disney Plus obviously launch an ad-funded model. So it's really interesting to see where Netflix Games is going to head to sort of capitalize on that growth from their competitors. They're rapidly hiring and also acquiring companies. They just recently, I think it was 2 weeks ago, acquired a third gaming studio in this endeavor. They've got a local gaming developer in New Zealand by the name of Pickpock, who are due to launch 2 games on the platform this year. Those 2 games prior were advertising funded and in-app purchase model funded games. Obviously, going onto the Netflix Games platform, there is no ads and no in-app purchase model. So it'll be really interesting to see how game developers respond to that new customer that they're acquiring in that space. But I think it's really quite clear that it is early days. I'm not sure if you can see those figures there. Currently, and it's one of their flagship games, Stranger Things, is currently reaching around 54,000 daily active users on the planet. In Australia, it's not that much, right? By contrast, Clash of Clans currently reaches about 23 million daily active users. So they've got a long way to go. But I think in the next maybe in the next 6 to 8 months even, it'll be really interesting to see how they plan to sort of grow this customer base and make money off it eventually, right? And look, we've all seen the articles, we've all seen the opinion pieces that, from Netflix, they're never getting into advertising. It's a no, it's a never say never from their CFO. We've seen all the opinion pieces saying they need to get into some form of advertising to fund this business model. Look, do I think that Netflix is going to start pummeling through programmatic ads in their games? Absolutely not. But I do think they're going to start an advertising funded model in a way that caters towards their strengths and their customers. If you look at Uber right now, they're developing an ad tech business within inside their business. They're not going to start putting through 320 by 50 ad slots in the Uber Rides and Uber Eats app, but they are funding and making an ad tech business that caters towards their strengths and also their customers. But taking a bit of a step back, right? What do actually developers need in this rapid change that we've been seeing in the last 2 to 3 years and even a couple of months? Well, it's quite obvious in research that we found that they understand a hybrid in-app ad and in-app purchase model works. The overwhelming majority believe that it actually adds to customer retention in a mobile gaming app. Advertising adds to customer retention inside an advertising and inside a mobile gaming app. And looking back even in 2019, game developers have actually been trying to tweak that in-game experience with advertising for some time. You can see a quote here. They actually tried to produce an advertising piece of content and experience inside this gaming app when a fortune teller would tell visions of another world, and that would be a highly targeted and relevant piece of advertising. If you look at what do consumers actually want? And look, a lot of this validates to what we're probably thinking. They don't want an overloaded ad experience. They don't want their gameplay to be disrupted. That makes sense. But I think mobile gaming has developed so much that consumers understand the value exchange they receive when they see an ad in gaming environments over and above most other environments. Because it's been innovating quickly and for so long, for the last 20 years, they don't mind seeing ads when it's relevant to them and it actually adds to that gaming experience. We ran research last year at InMobi that we found that 94% of mobile gamers actually prefer to see an ad to progress through that game. But it makes sense. They want to see advertising that's relevant. They don't want it to disrupt their content, right? And so we're actually at this sort of inflection point. Gamers want more non-intrusive ads. They still want ads to fund their loyally engaged game, their favorite gaming app. Developers want to obviously still fund that, make revenue from that. They're balancing that psychology between in-app ads and in-app purchases. So we're at this inflection point. What do we actually do here? How do brands actually capitalize on this? And I think with any innovation, it does foster new innovation of itself, right? What this actually done over recent years is given some rise to something called blended in-game advertising. Now, I've got a bit of an example here. It's a really nice example from one of our partners. What you're seeing here in this virtual world is, ads in sort of an outdoor sort of aspect. And all of this is now accessible programmatically. So this is really exciting, right? This inflection point has given a rise to this innovation. But it's the same apps that we know, the same games that we love, new and existing games coming out with enhanced targeting formats, enhanced opportunities to reach consumers in ways they want to be reached, and also supporting developers by that same token. So this is really exciting. I think it is also important to understand, I've been in the mobile ad tech space for quite a while now, understanding that anything new and shiny, can be more met with a high barrier to entry, let's say. But I think it's also crucial to understand that this development work has been going on for some time now in this blended in-game ad format. And we'll hear from our panel in a second of some of these developments in viewability, for instance. But all the bells and whistles, all the important checkboxes are ticked. Measurement, audience verification, audience themselves. Speaking from on behalf of our exchange here, because these gaming apps are the same apps as before, targeting opportunities is the same, right? Obviously, fraud protection, brand lift studies, I think the key message here is now is that time to test. We've heard from panels before today that testing and learning is crucial to sort of developing a future-proof sort of solution. And so what we've actually done at InMobi with our exchange is, given the breadth of opportunity in mobile gaming, it's one of the most popular forms of entertainment on mobile. It does require scale and diversity, right, to meet that innovation head on. Now, across our exchange, we're seeing currently around 6 platforms, expecting that to rise, obviously. About 50 publishers. In some cases, each publisher has about 3 to 5 apps, so there's a lot of scale there in just applications alone. And look, currently, we're seeing about 7 million ad requests per day, about 210 million per month in Australia. Globally, it's about 650 million per day, right? So this is a massive opportunity in terms of scale, addressability as well. But also, I think, opportunities for sort of brands to sort of capitalize on that inflection point that I was referencing before. And I think, as we see these platforms develop their own ad tech business as well, example of that is how they're partnering with publishers, other publishers and platforms and technology. We've recently done a quite interesting partnership with Anzu, one of the leaders in this space, that gives us direct access and first call access to their inventory. So we expect to see adoption of those technologies improve over time. And I think what's really interesting, Admix, another one of those partners, they actually ran a survey last year, one of the first surveys ever in that blended in-game environment, trying to identify, okay, what are the actual mobile gaming categories that are expected to adopt this new innovation, right? And what they actually expected was that sports, racing games, with existing real estate, like billboards on the side of a racing track or just in a soccer or football stadium, would come out on top. What they actually found was that hyper-casual games were the clear winner. Now, we've actually done research on the audiences behind this, and I think this is really interesting for a brand to sort of understand, and that the audiences behind hyper-casual games is a healthy split of gender, and that 45 to 55-year-old age bracket. The same with racing, sports, simulation, and puzzle classified as casual games. Again, an even split in gender in that 18 to 35 plus age bracket. Typically, the audiences that a lot of advertisers probably think are only playing mobile games, that males 25 and above, these apps are developing strategies around in-game, but not as quickly as the majority of hyper-casual and casual games. And look, in Australia, the healthy majority of mobile games are in that same bracket there that Admix saw globally. So there is an alignment in terms of where this innovation is definitely headed. And so look, Admix, on that same study across their current publishers, they found that 94% of their publisher base is expected to produce more blended in-game strategies this year, or last year, I should say. So this year would be that sort of key testing and learning phase. Another one of Frameplay, another one of our partners, their ad recall case study about 78%. And I think going back to that example we saw with blended in-game, it's very much a branded outcome mechanism. It's definitely for that top and mid funnel outcome that a brand is hoping to achieve: awareness, recall, retention. We actually ran an interesting case study this year with an auto client of ours, and obviously we saw on par, ad recall, brand association metrics. But what was really interesting was that post-view action. Because the space is currently uncluttered, and I do believe there will be strategies from a developer angle to make it uncluttered in the future. It is now a great time for a brand to sort of leverage that psychology of a game developer and also what a consumer wants to see inside their favorite game. Look, before I pass you over to the panel, I just want to leave you with three key takeaways, right? The first being, obviously, innovation requires quick action. I think the gaming industry, more so than probably any other industry, innovates incredibly quickly. And we see Netflix, we see Clash of Clans, what they did in just 5 years after the iPhone launched. It's imperative for someone like us in the audience to sort of understand that innovation just cannot pass us by, to sort of test and learn, right? I think we see direct feedback from this new innovation. We see direct feedback from this innovative category of mobile games. Developers and gamers are welcoming this change. So for a brand to identify that sweet spot, I guess, easier than ever before, is quite powerful in what they're trying to achieve in their branded outcomes. And then lastly, look, it's imperative for a brand, an agency, trading desk to work with platforms, publishers, and technology that can again meet that breadth of mobile gaming opportunity. So having scale and diversity is absolutely key. Look, with that in mind, I'll pass you over to JJ now to introduce the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent stuff, Matt. Thank you very much. So if the panelists could make their way to the stage, I'm putting the mics here because I forgot to do it prior. Sorry about that. Oh, there we go. Just hold the little red button under the base to turn them on. Valentina? Seamless. Thank you so much. So I'm actually going to, before I ask questions, ask you guys to introduce yourselves, starting with you, Valentina. Just hold the red button underneath on the base and it will turn on. Sorry, I didn't want to do it because I thought if I did it, it would scream feedback. Maybe it wouldn't. It's on, it's coming on.
Is it working? Okay.
Yes, it is.
My name is Valentina and I lead the platform team at InMobi. We look after the growth of the exchange in Australia and New Zealand. and the local partnership that we have here in this region with platforms, verification partners, and agency trading desks.
Thank you. My name is June Chung. I'm the Regional Director for Oracle Advertising. You might be more familiar with brands like Moat Analytics on the verification perspective, Grapeshot, contextual targeting, and Bluekai, third-party audiences.
Hi, my name is Yun Yip, General Manager at Foxcatcher, technology business with CDP and DMP capabilities, and we work with brands and publishers and agencies to improve their digital outcomes.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to have such a stellar panel. And worth noting that there's a number of members here and everyone on the stage as a part of a working group that we put together recently. I can see Ben Murray up there from Interplay, and actually Dan from Oracle sits on that working group whilst June's here. And we put together a study in terms of the buyers' attitudes to gaming. And within that, first question for you, Yun. I know you guys are keen to be on that working group. We will discuss that. We will discuss that later. That 44% of advertisers were yet to take the plunge. So there is still some resistance there. Can you dive into why that might be?
There should be about 3 key misperceptions. The first one, I believe, is that of a stereotype of the consumer. There's still that misperception of who a gamer really is. And a lot of the times when you say gamer, they have the idea that it's a teenager playing game in their parents' garage or basement, eating a bucket of KFC. Not that there's anything wrong with that, right? Because I would do the latter.
It's my weekend.
And that's really not the case. We saw in Matt's study earlier, it really is a 50-50 male-female split, and it's a very, very diverse group of audience. It's just the type of games that people play that's a little bit different. The second one is a misperception around what gaming actually is, or what are the games that people play. Unfortunately, there has been quite a bit of backlash in the last few years, and the things that tend to make headlines are games that incite violence. When in actual fact, when we think about mobile and in-game mobile, there's a lot of free-to-play apps. The content is really lighthearted. It's rarely user-generated. So when you think about brand safety, it doesn't get any safer than that. And the very last one will be that around what we do, around media activation. I don't believe there is enough education around what measurement can be, what success can look like, or what success can look like within the different types of gaming properties.
Yeah, that's a really competent answer. And coming to you, Valentina, in and around all things mobile gaming, the same survey mentioned that mobile gaming ad experiences are incredibly popular. So what can programmatic platforms or agency trading desks, how can they leverage this opportunity as an effective medium for their investments?
Yeah, actually, there is a lot to cover if we want to talk about innovation using mobile gaming advertising. And I think that we should definitely mention creativity. Creativity is very important in this context, and also the variety of formats that we can find on games, on mobile games. Indeed, normally people think that, on games you can only find banners, but it's actually not true. You can find vertical videos, rewardable videos, interactive ads, also in-game formats. So the list is pretty long. And the combination of creativity and formats can lead to a very good user experience. And as Matt was mentioning before, user experience is something that game developers are really focusing on right now. They're trying to create games with a really good user experience, and also trying to blend ads into games in order to create even a better user experience. So I think that actually advertisers and buyers, they should focus a lot on games and user experience. Indeed, in a research that we ran last year here in Australia, we actually found out that mobile gamers, they're more receptive to advertising than non-gamers. Indeed, they associate advertising with high quality brands, and then they tend to buy from these brands. And also a really good example of innovation using gaming advertising, it can actually be found in the fashion industry. And this is a very curious example because, the fashion industry, it has always been a very traditional industry when it comes to advertising and planning campaigns. But actually in the last couple of years, since people couldn't go to stores, fashion events were canceled. So they had to try to find an alternative way to reach their consumers. So they started using gaming advertising. And for instance, Balenciaga last year, they launched a game in order to showcase their fall collection for 2021. And it was a huge success because nobody ever did this before. And it really got shoppers' attention. And in terms of numbers, after 48 hours, they launched the game. The searches for this brand on list, they rose by 41%, which is an incredible achievement.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that Balenciaga, they actually spent a bit of money for this game, but I think that advertisers with smaller budgets, they can get to the same level of innovation and get really good results by actually using programmatic advertising.
It's great to see that level of creativity and commitment, because there would have been some risk there. And the Italian fashion brand with your accent sounds perfect. So June, obviously I'm going to ask Oracle this question, and from my experience, and I'm going way back, there was almost an emotional resistance to the levels of environment, brand safety, viewability in and around gaming. So can you talk us a little bit about those concerns and how we're these days more competently addressing those concerns?
Yeah, absolutely. And to Yun's point, it's about measurement to get people to be more comfortable to get into mobile gaming and invest in the medium. So if I cover the basis and talk about basic mobile gaming in terms of display ads, video, from a verification perspective, we can do it. We can do viewability, we can do IVT, we can do brand safety. What Matt's presentation was very exciting was that blended in-game where you're driving, you're playing a FIFA game and you're seeing ads in the stadium or billboards going by. So one thing that's innovative and exciting in the verification world is how we're addressing IVT, because whenever there's investments, there's growth in a sector, there's always going to be bad actors. So that constant measuring and ensuring that we're avoiding paying those bad actors and investing in their inventory. The second one, for the techie guys from Admix perspective that's in here, is viewability. So traditional viewability is very 2D. The ad comes on the screen, 50% was shown, at least 1 second, it ticks a box that it's viewable. In an in-game environment, like the videos that Matt shared in his PowerPoint presentation, there's that 3D effect. So it's no longer just 2D, there's that Z-axis that you need to consider. Like, is that ad in the horizon or is it up close? If it's in the horizon, it's not viewable to the consumer. Is there another car obstructing that particular ad? How long is it in view for? And then in particular, you can have to consider the angle. If I'm front on, I get a clear viewability, but anything beyond 55% degree, we classify that as non-viewable, because at that angle, you don't get a clear vision of what viewability is. So as a verification provider, this is really exciting stuff that we're working with, like the InMobi and the gaming SSP suppliers to go, hey, these are the new things that we're doing to ensure we're measuring viewability for this audience. In particular, brand safety, it's an interesting one. It's something that we're still working on because we need to work with the industry like the IAB, MRC, brands, publishers. What is considered safe or not? It's harder because, as Yun said, like there's a lot of apps that out there or games that are mainly shooting, like violence related. So we need to find that balance and agreement to classify. The technology is there, but the industry needs to come to agreement. What is brand safe, not safe? And it's always based on that individual brand's decision.
Yep. That's something we're trying to work with. There's a US working group and a UK working group. We want to swap notes on that. So look out for that. That's been promising that since before Christmas, but we will be getting together with both of those groups to review this. So back to the opportunities, Yun, in terms of what do you feel is the real need of the hour for brands and advertisers in and around these opportunities to really start programmatically investing?
I think it's the education and understanding around the three key ways of advertising within games or advertising in the gaming environment. So having the understanding of what is in-game, around game, and away from game, and all of the associated formats, measurement, as well as success metrics that can be tied in with them. That will be pretty much key. The other thing that's interesting about gaming too is not many people know how to value gamers as well as games at this point in time. And I think as specialists on stage is something that we can work with brands and agencies on, helping them understand the value exchange for the consumer as well as the environment that they are in, coinciding with the type of formats that they have chosen.
Mm-hmm. That's very nicely summarized. So Valentina, it feels like there's more work required in terms of education and awareness for the opportunities that lie therein. So where do you think we need to start there?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I would like to mention the IAB gaming survey we're talking about, because in the survey, we actually see that most of the people, they think they have a medium level of knowledge of gaming advertising, which is actually not a bad thing. It's a really good thing because we should see this as an opportunity. Indeed, it shouldn't take that much to raise that level of knowledge and bring it to the next level. And how do we get this done? Actually, the answer and also the major challenge is education, because there is a lot of false myths around gaming advertising. And as Yoon was mentioning before, the first one and the biggest one is around the audience, because people think that gaming audience, they're normally males, very young, so they don't have money. The buying power is very low, but actually, in a research we ran last year here in Australia, we actually found out that 58% of gamers, they're women. Mm-hmm. And they are actually not young either, because almost half of these women are above the age of 45. For example, when I went back home to Italy over Christmas after 3.5 years being locked away, I actually found out that my mom, she's a huge fan of Candy Crush. And when I was preparing for this panel, I was actually thinking, how many people will go for a gaming strategy if they have to target women 60 plus? I think not many.
You're surveying your own mother as part of your research.
I haven't yet, but I should. That's a good point. So the reality is that the audience is there and there is plenty of choice, because they go from 18 plus to 60 plus, and there is plenty of scale as well, because people, they spend more and more time on their smartphones. And here in Australia, in the specific, 85% of gamers, they play on their smartphone. 90% of these gamers, they play at least once a day, and half of these gamers, they spend at least 30 minutes per session. So it's a huge amount of time that these people spend on their smartphones playing games, basically. Yeah. And the second false myth is actually around brand safety and brand suitability. Actually, the survey, was showing that when advertisers run campaigns programmatically, they do it on the open exchange. And, if brand safety and brand suitability is actually a concern, they should actually start with running their campaigns on a curated marketplace. And that should be the first step. And this is actually a pretty quick fix for this problem. So you also asked me how we can address this education problem. Yes. With education, because actually there is a lot of platforms, tech players that actually, they did a lot of work on certifications and courses around programmatic and all topics in media. Also last year, InMobi, we launched InMobi University, which is a certification focused on programmatic and programmatic on mobile. So the reality is that there is a lot of material out there and it's open to everyone. And then the second point will be actually to try to be more open to innovation, try new strategies, and also try to see things from a different perspective. Because as I proved before, what we thought were actually problems, blockers. With the right knowledge and seeing these things from a different perspective, we actually find a solution pretty quickly.
Yep. So we're also having an event in this very auditorium in a few months' time on gaming, which will coincide the release of a gaming handbook, where we'll all be working on aspects of that. And it's actually fascinating, the range of products. We're looking to demonstrate a lot of those opportunities for you. So look out for that. I can't actually remember the exact date. Sorry, Jen. So greenfield opportunity for you, Yun, in terms of, and you can talk about anything here. What are the most exciting opportunities that you see in this space, in, around, within, and all the other various options over the next 12 to 18 months?
How
What
much
are you
time do
genuinely
I
excited
have?
by? Yeah, well.
I think to Val's point, right, you know, her mum plays Candy Crush. And I think that is just a testament just to how much more we can use gaming strategies as well as gaming audience. So more and more so, I think in the next 12 months, we will start to see gamers and gaming strategy and audience be part of a larger piece of marketing campaigns and to be integrated within these marketing brand campaigns. The other thing that will be very exciting as well will also be that in the next 12 to 18 months, devices will continue to improve, bandwidth will continue to improve, and so will developers' skills to create better games. The better gaming experience through the combination of that will have a symbiotic relationship with in-game just continuing to increase and the ability for us to do more with the audience within that particular environment. One thing that I personally am a little bit excited about, and I won't harp on because I'm quite excited about it, is also what we can now do within what we can now do with the metaverse. So whilst the metaverse isn't all about gaming, gaming is a huge part of it. At Foxcatcher, we're now able to link metaverse audience with real life media. So in the current digital Web 2 world, and that's something which we believe will be a great way for brands and advertisers to get in touch with people with really high value as well as high level of disposable income, but just a very different way to engage that isn't just your standard 30-second ad or just your standard display.
Okay, and I mean, that's a big topic, and I think that's one that we'll touch upon at the next event for certain. So, but June, in terms of driving out more scale and taking really leveraging the opportunity, how do you feel we can? What are the next steps to be able to achieve that level of scale?
Yeah, so I guess to the key things that Yoon and Valentina mentioned, there's education. There's a value part that brands and agencies need to understand to do more in gaming. Coming from an Oracle verification perspective, how we can help is giving that same theme of consistency and metrics of success for existing digital campaigns. So a lot of brands look at their digital investments. They want to understand, was it viewed by a human? Was it viewable? So taking those metrics as a first step into in-gaming, I think it's a good start to scaling. At the moment, how we measure it is through direct integrations with the gaming SSPs. In order to scale for the next step, I see as the same evolution as CTV. So CTV started as very, custom ad hoc integrations with verification providers, but in future there'll be OMSDK versions or a different way of measuring consistently for the group here from an ADOS perspective. A consistent measurement enables us to scale. I don't think that's just around the corner. The investments need to follow like the standard, but I see that happening.
And one aspect we've seen, Valentina, which I know InMobi have done a lot of work on, and you deal with a lot of your partners within the iOS environments, is some of the limitations, particularly here in Australia, to the prevalence of Apple products on the Apple's ATT feature. Is there any updates that you've got there or further recommendations in terms of tackling that?
Yes, so it has actually been a year since Apple they enforced these ATT changes, and actually we've seen in the last 12 months buyers, advertisers, and publishers adapting in different ways and working on these changes in different ways as well. And then we also seen a few trends, actually positive trends in this market, because actually in terms of opt-in rates, we started pretty low last year. In May last year, we were at around 11%.
Yes.
And then in the last 12 months, they stabilized at around 28, 29%, which is a pretty good result. And this means that actually publishers, they've done a really good job in working on the ATT prompt, in tweaking the messaging and the timing. And also users, they actually realize that they want personalized experiences. And also another thing that we notice is that the opt-in rates, they actually change across apps and app categories. So the same user, for instance, it can decide to opt in some apps and opt out from other apps. And the bottom line to this is that actually, a user is more willing and more open to share their personal data if he gets in return a really good user experience. And this goes back to what I was saying before about how important is a good user experience right now. In terms of recommendations, well, I would recommend to keep running KPI-based campaigns, because metrics like viewability, completion rate, CTR, those type of metrics, they haven't changed with IDFA. And actually, they are a good method to understand the level of engagement that actually advertisers can expect from users. And also keep working on contextual targeting, focusing on contextual targeting, because apps and app categories are a good proxy for user engagement, for user behavior. And in-game is actually a really good example of contextual targeting. Just saying that, you're playing a game, you are in a shopping mall, and the ads around you, they make sense. So definitely KPI-based campaigns and contextual targeting.
Yeah, I think that consumer value exchange has become a lot clearer. To me personally, at least in terms of in-app prompts, it's become a lot smarter. So that's becoming clearer. How are we doing on Slido? Any Oh, you're still awake, Jen? Sorry. Brand sentiment studies. Well, we include that in the survey? Yes, there was some feedback on that that's worth looking, so please look it up. I can't remember off the top of my head. Matt, you look primed. So I sit down.
It's an interesting question. I think it is a conception that a lot of marketers have had for quite some time, in terms of a negative game experience can harm my brand. What we have to understand is that game developers have understood that for the last 5 years and are getting a lot better at measuring that themselves with their direct feedback from their customers, right? And to answer the question as well, there are tools out there to measure brand sentiment, brand affinity when it comes to, especially in-game advertising. It's the same mobile gaming apps that people know and love. So there are tools and solutions out there for sure. Yeah.
I'm looking at Nat for the research we did, because Nat's our queen of research.
I might add to Matt's comment. I think the format as well. So in the past, mobile gaming is banners and there's pre-roll videos, so very intrusive. Where we're moving is to blended in-game. So it's a much more seamless experience, less interfering from gaming. So that should have better for the person who's gaming, and then better effectiveness from the brand perspective. That's my 2 cents. It's not research, my opinion.
Love it. I think that's why we got you up here, June. So we do have a few more minutes because we ran late, because you know we're all carrying on outside, which is fine. That's why you're here. We'll see if there's anything else on Slido. I've got a question for you actually, June, because we ran, a few of us in the working group, we tried to bust some myths around our own personal involvement in games. I was going to ask you, June, what your favorite game is, but do you have a particular myth busting around gaming that you want to share with us, June?
Yeah, I think key themes you might have noticed from Matt's presentation, and we've mentioned the audience, the gaming audience. JJ, I love KFC as well, a huge fan. So maybe that could be our catering thing for the Data Council. You're here as you're the KFC fan. So we busted in the myth that gamers are male and they only eat KFC. So I want to ask the audience, get the audience involved. All right. So who at the moment plays a game that you've seen in-game advertising? Put your hand up. Okay, that's a few more, a bit more than I expected. Who here does mobile? Oh, keep your hands up, please. Keep your hands up. Who does mobile gaming like Candy Crush, any type of app game? Have you played it in the past? Oh, a few more hands up. Who's played Snake on Nokia? Oh, everyone. See, we've got a diverse crowd here today and everyone put their hand up for mobile gaming. So gaming is for everyone. We just need to work harder to convince the brands and the audience.
I think I'll add on one point as well. Like there's no other channel where if I'm playing a game, there's no way I'm second screening.
Mhm.
The attention that you actually have for in-game is 100%. You're not going to be doing something else, right? So
Yeah.
that's something that I don't think we actually brought up earlier. But when you think about if you want attention, if you want recall, gaming does have a very different dimension in comparison to any other digital screen.
Yeah, that was actually my myth bust. Is I quite like a 20-minute competitive live game in NHL online against largely children, because it's so immersive that you're just like 20 minutes later I'm out of it. I haven't got the energy to do more than that, but it's a great way of breaking up my day. That's my excuse anyway. With or without the KFC, which I'm not allowed anymore. Any questions from the floor before we pass on? It's not the right term. But anyway, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Matt, for the presentation. Thank you, panelists.